It's not like playing as Origen is a huge difference for me. It's just playing as a good player.
Stay focused, stay focused.
Our playstyles are a lot different.
I think he's pretty good mechanically.
He rarely falls behind.
He thinks when he plays.
In teamfight, he does the damage he has to do.
Buckets.
They don't have TP, land over Rek'Sai, we don't know
Go!
Rek'Sai top.
He can actually also understand his limits pretty well into a team fight.
He's more of a lane dominant player, but nowadays he's not so much lane dominant anymore.
He can actually carry games whenever he has that attention from his team.
The triple kill coming in for Sven.
Ace for Origen and all on the back of Sven.
You're just there to do damage, you know, like there to be a huge playmaker, and some games he's that, and some games he's not.
No target. Alistar is 6.
It's all about being there when you have to be there and always be useful.
Moments ago, the fans were filing in. Trevor and I had a little bit of a fan meet with the people here inside, and the Elements are entering the building for the first match of the day as they are up against the Giants. There's Mr. Riles giving a cheeky look at the camera, and of course Pepinero had a great game yesterday, and there they are, the fans absolutely excited for the continuation of week 6 here in the European LCS, absolutely ready to go. Hello, I'm EpicSkillshot supporter here to lend an analytical eye to the competition with the help of Mitch Kreppel-Voorspoels and Trevor Quickshot. Henry, welcome, gentlemen. A lot to look out for us today because we have a 4-way tie, which is a... We've had a lot of ties in Europe before, but the 4-way tie for the top of the tables is something quite interesting. Of course, G2, H2K, the Unicorns of Love, and Team Vitality.
And it's just great that a lot of these teams also have one-to-one head-to-heads. As the split has gone on, we've seen a lot of progression from some of these teams. Maybe H2K, G2 sitting up there. UOL, with their roster problems, are still continuing to impress, but they're starting to fall off the pace of the rest of that top 4 bracket.
Yeah, definitely Unicorns a little lower in that 4-way tie. G2 can be made an argument against them. Their macro just wasn't on point. The way they actually lost that game and the flaws they've showed kind of doesn't... they don't deserve the top 2, let's put it that way. Because if you looked at the way Vitality and H2K played, it was kind of... Both teams are actually playing chess against each other rather than one chess, one checkers. And G2's macro in the mid game was just very, very lacking. And they play their style well, but I think Vitality and H2K showed more flexibility. I'm excited to see how H2K bounce back now that Ryu's going to be back scrimming with the team. And I also want to see Vitality continue this consistent run, because coming into the split, Shook and Nukeduck, I didn't know how good they would be every single week. And the last 3, they've been phenomenal. Yeah, H2K and Vitality in our minds are tactical and maybe best teams in that top 4. Do you think that OG or Fnatic, who are just below that top 4, deserve to be in it? Well, I think at this moment? Top 4, no. Not by a long shot. Are they still in the top 6? Yes, obviously. We've got this very clear divide of top 6, bottom 4. I mean, Fnatic are 1 game behind. You know, their record 7-5 versus the 8-3. So, well, 7-4 rather versus 8-3. It's very, very close. What we're just seeing is too many mistakes from both Fnatic and Origen, week to week to week, and they're not growing the way they should be. Let's talk about a lot of mistakes. Yesterday, it was a messy day over here in the European LCS. Before that last game of the day, H2K versus Vitality, which was, of course, of high tactical level. All the teams that won had been at a deficit at 10, at 15, and at 20 minutes. It was just absolute chaos. What do you think happened to the teams? Europe's just the greatest region at playing from behind. What can I say? No, Kog'Maw happened for 1. Obviously, this pick is a really good late game carry. And I think, to sum it up, is a lot of these drafts played out. Some team has a power spike at 25, around 30 minutes at the latest. If they don't really have a big lead at that point, they will get outscaled, and I think that happened in a number of games where late game Kog'Maw came to play. In the one game, Vitality versus H2K, it was actually super close, and late game Kog'Maw could actually almost carry that, despite playing with Lissandra and Malphite, who are quite notorious to have very early spikes in the game. And if you looked at some of the games that were won from behind, a lot of those was because of mistakes by one team or the other. G2
really giving the game away at Baron to Fnatic, allowed enough time to stall for Fnatic to come back into it. Gamsu just point and click with Maokai, and they can follow up. Later, or early in the day rather, Origen, they needlessly dragged out their game 20 minutes by misplaying a 2v2 in the bottom lane. They gave Elements literally 20 minutes of breathing room, but they bounced back and played the map. So I think more heads-up play, less individual mistakes, and we'll see some of those come from behind wins happen less.
What do we see in terms of 6.3 besides that? Besides Kog'Maw, of course, the prevalence. Corki could have been less picked as a flex, but we still saw him a lot.
Yeah, we saw less Corki. We went over that yesterday, but I think the most important thing that we have to realize is that the Fishio was wrong. Let's just talk a little bit about that.
4 out of 5 games Gragas picked.
Yeah, we'll talk to him in a little bit, but yeah, he came into the week saying, Gragas, I don't think is going to be played that much. 4 out of 5 games, he was picked or banned.
I do think there's a little bit of fairness that 30% of all the bans yesterday were jungle bans. So obviously when that pool gets hit and gets limited and Nidalee's first picked a couple times, we'll see Gragas up there. I still prefer seeing Gragas to the Nidalee. I feel Gragas offers a little bit more than what a Nidalee offers, just in terms of some of the kit that Stress was talking about, some of the disengage, the meatiness as it were. I also prefer him going Cinderhulk, which we saw a couple times yesterday. So it's nice seeing him back in the jungle, and hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, you like the meaty junglers. I have grown a fondness of slender junglers like Nidalee, because I was the complete anti-Nidalee. I really didn't like the pick early, but the way people have been playing her later in the season, or maybe they've always been playing and I was wrong, is just that they're very farm-centric. They outpace their opponent by choosing to farm 2 or 3 extra camps while that opponent is going for a gank. If that gank doesn't work, you are now so far behind in the jungle in terms of tempo and map movements that Nidalee will just come in and take your farm away from you. And I think that's really cool. Decision tree kind of, you know, do you match the Nidalee in farm and get outpaced anyways, but less, or do you actually go for the risky gank? Stuff like that I think is fascinating to watch.
Well, we'll see what the junglers go for today and how the play goes on the new patch as the fight for playoff contention continues, with Elements facing Giants in just a few minutes. After that is Vitality versus the UOL in a clash for first, and then OG will take on H2K. OG, if they played like yesterday and H2K, despite losing like that, I don't think OG has much of a chance.
I think that's fair. I think H2K still looked good yesterday up against Vitality, and I think even with Ryu, that last engage, maybe being a little bit ahead of the rest of the team, they still look very good. Their macro game is still on point in terms of how they play the map. I'm very interested to just see how that bottom half of the table is also going to play out. The fact that Elements has to beat Giants if they want to start, put some distance between promo relegation and that safety spot in 7th.
I want to see if Vitality can put some consistency to their honestly very clean gameplay overall, and some of these really, really fun combos like the Zillion Bard. Even though they didn't kind of knew about the Thresh interaction beforehand, they adapted a little bit around it, and they seem to play very controlled. And I think that controlled style should actually work against the unicorns that are showing up right now, because they're kind of regressed a little bit and a little lost, and I think Vitality should be... We get to see how good Vitality is against Unicorns today.
Yeah, whatever happens in that game later on, we'll also have Team Vitality's Cabochard joining us. So send us your questions for the hard carry top laner with the hashtag AskCabochard. And be sure to send your questions at LOL Esports, and we'll run your thoughts by our guests later today. For now, though, we're going to check in with the Fish Show to hear his thoughts on the Vision game in 2016.
Oh, what do you know?
I'm here, guys. I heard everything. Today in the Telestrator, we're going to see how the LCS teams are warding, but not the Gragas junglers. We don't want to look at their warding at all. It's every other jungler instead. So we have collected data from the early game of every team, how they ward between 2 minutes and 10 minutes. And you can see here on your map how the thicker the dot is, the more wards have been placed, or the thicker the red color is, the more wards have been placed in that spot. And we have decided to highlight the 6 most common ward spots for teams in the early game. Obvious ones around the mid lane. We have the 2 here in the river, in the small bushes. Very clear. You get to see almost everything because you have 4 different paths leading to this ward. You can see if teams are roaming from lanes, if they come from the jungle, if they enter the jungle. You get all that information. So this is the most important ward almost in the entire early game. 2 other ones are at the raptor camps. These are being placed by the enemy junglers because when they invade in and steal your camp, they very often place a ward. It's the same as this one. You have basically 4 different paths you're going to see. And it's just the most normal and efficient jungle path for any jungler to take when he enters the jungle and leaves the jungle, to walk through here, and you will spot him and get the information. The 2, should we say different wards, or maybe not too expected ward placements, are down in the bottom lane, tri-bush, and then up here in the top lane as well. And these are very specific. First one down the bottom lane, it's because when you're the blue side dual lane, you want to have a pink ward in that bush almost all game or all laning phase long, because you want to have that path for your jungler to gank. You want to obviously deny that vision from the enemy. The thing is, when you're fighting against two people, they can often fight you for these wards here. So they will go in and try and contest it. They want to place their own wards, so they have tri-bush warded, and then this bush here. Together, you block almost any jungle path, except for people who can jump over the wall. And that's why you have a dot here, because that's then the third placement you're going to have to spot every single gank coming towards the bottom lane. Top lane is somewhat the same. We have up here the tri-bush, where there's always going to be a pink ward from the enemy top lane, the red side top laner. That means when you are on blue side, you want to place your ward here in the river bush, because then combined with the ward down here, you're spotting everything. You have control of the river. You can see any gank happening, and the gank is going to happen in front of you. That makes it a lot easier then to flash away or dash away if needed. If people are ganking you from here, instead of them trying to like sneak around you and suddenly surprising you if you're pushed too far up. So that's the two common places on the side lanes, and it's very, very important to remember those, because we're going to see in the clip now how Gilius and his team have these spots here warded. You see this bush here, that's the river bush, that's being warded up. Down here in mid lane, he knows, okay, there's no ward here. There has to be a ward around mid lane, and that's where the pink is placed. So he's hugging the wall, and that actually means he can dodge around it. He doesn't get spotted. It's a very clever ganking path. He steals away a camp, and he's looking to gank the Tahm Kench up in top lane. We're 5 minutes in, by the way. We talked about that pink ward in the tri-bush here from the enemy team. He knows that as well, so he's going to jump to the golems to dodge around this ward for as long as possible, and then he's going to sneak around it, and he won't get spotted until here when he passes the tree, and that makes it so difficult for Kikis now to react. Again, he doesn't have a flash, he's already been ganked once. It's an easy kill now for Elements, and it's Gilius and his team having the correct wards in the river to then know, okay, there's only two places that can be wards from G2, and then he just dodges around them very, very efficiently, and he sets up a gank, and he gets a kill. And talk about the junglers, we're going to look at how blue side junglers are warding in the early game, specifically just the blue side junglers only. We're still 2 minutes to 10 minutes, so we're in the early game. A lot of the wards are the same, but you see a lot of focus in the enemy jungle. And the reason we have two spots here, we talked about the Raptor one, you're spotting everything, 4 different paths walking in. The second one is in front of the red buff, and this is very often a pink ward, and that's because as a jungler, you know what the most efficient jungle path is for the enemy jungler. And that's going from your camp straight down to another camp, down to another camp, and then move over to the other lane. That means the jungler will not check this bush when he walks by. So placing a pink ward here that can last for 5-10 minutes gives you a lot of information, and you can basically track where the enemy jungler is. Same goes for the blue side jungle, which we're going to jump to now. So down where the blue buff is of the red side team, obviously. And that's where you're going to have to see the same kind of situation. This bush right here is also often being pink warded for the exact same reason. The most efficient jungle path is moving this way into your jungle, take your wolves, take your blue buff, take your grump. That means you don't check this bush. And often the ward here will then spot you walking by, giving the needed information to predict a gank or just know where the team are sending their members so you can then make a play on the other side of the map. Around the blue buff is very obvious, 4 different paths coming in, even 5 actually, so you spot all of them. And then we have the specific ward down here, in the lane, behind the grump. That's in lane swaps. Because when the tier 1 tower dies in a lane swap, this ward right here buys you more time to understand and know how long can my top laner sit and farm. Because they will always freeze the wave and get as much farm as possible. So when they see where the enemy is sending their dual lane after the lane swap, or they see how fast they're going to come down to stop you, you know if you can get 3-4 extra CS, or you need to just back away instantly. So it's a very clever ward. It's just safety, and it allows you sometimes to be a little bit faster on the play. Last spot we're going to look at where the blue side junglers are warding is around the mid lane. Because we notice a very specific trend from the LCS junglers, where the junglers will always, almost always, ward on the bottom side in this mid lane push. That's because they prefer to start on the top side of the map, due to the fact that your dual lane often wants to do a camp at level 1 on the bottom side. So they will start top, get a leash from the top laner, then path down towards the bottom side jungle, and then in like 3 minutes, you're going to walk in and you're going to ward right here. Second thing is just the way the map is built. It is a lot easier to do your camp and then walk straight over here, ward in the bush, and then walk down towards the bottom side. Top lane, you can see you have to like kind of move around a little bit, move in towards the mid lane, then move back out. It's not efficient, and every jungler wants to spend every second on something useful, not walking into place a little ward. So that's a nice little trend from junglers, but it does mean someone else has to ward up here, and that's going to be the mid laners. So we're going to see how they are putting so much focus on warding the top side bush, and especially very close to the wall, because this is blue side. So the blue side mid laner will walk close to the wall over here to make sure he never face checks anything. You don't want to walk straight into the bush. He walks around it, and then he walks over the wall. So they're placed around here in this area, and not so often down here because the jungler is taking care of it. Look for it in the LCS. If you see the jungler come to lane, and you don't notice him ever really go to the side and ward, there's very high chance this is not warded from the blue side, and that could be an opening and a good ganking path. So this is how the LCS teams are warding, specifically the blue side in the early game. Hopefully some of it is useful for you guys in solo queue. Remember, wards, they do save lives. I know they don't look very sexy in game, but they are super, super important. And now, we're just going to toss it over to the casters, but before that, we're just going to listen to Adam talking about how Giants can turn the season around.
Like, we had a lot of problems and we weren't the strongest team. So we needed synergy and team communication and everything. And it's kind of hard when you're from the bottom and it doesn't motivate you to keep losing. But now it pays off. As you can see, now we won. We want to win every game and we focus for each game. And now we just have to keep working, and then I think we can come back into the game.